What is up, Never Ending Adventure podcasts and all of our adventures and still unnamed people we don't know. I don't know what they call y'all.
Adventurites.
I
don't know.
I had a great one earlier today, but I honestly, for the life of me, could not remember what it is right now. So
I don't know. Well, I'm Ned Pruitt.
I'm Russell Tyndall.
And we are going to go adventure and do business today.
Yeah, today is a business-heavy, business-only, nothing but business episode. We're getting down to brass tacks. This isn't necessarily a "we're charging you" episode. Not yet. We're not big.
Not yet.
That.
But we like business, so we like money.
We do like business, and the only reason we're doing this podcast is for money.
Yeah, it's not like I enjoy, hanging out with you guys or, talking about my favorite show or anything like that.
I asked my dad what I should do for money because my full-time job wasn't enough. And he said, you should start a podcast about a niche TV show from, the late 2000s.
That's what he said. That's
the way to do it. It worked for him.
That's what my dad said when I was born. He said, son, I want you to grow up and create a niche Cartoon Network podcast. Show, adventure time, all the words.
Do as I say, not as I do, is what another thing I think my dad always said. And he actually did say that, though.
Oh, man. Well, if you haven't caught on yet, we're talking about Business Time episode. This is season 1, episode 8 of Adventure Time, and it is all business, baby.
It is all business. And we're introduced to 4, I guess, is it 4 right? New characters. One of them has a red tie. The others have blue ties.
Yeah.
And the red tie guy is kind of the guy of the forefront of the group. Early on, they're like trying to melt ice, like glaciers, essentially, that float into the beach.
Yeah.
And they're just like going through left-footed shoes or
just
socks.
Left-footed baby socks.
I love that. And one of the things that pop up are a bunch of it's almost like cavemen in ice or whatever type thing. But then when they melt it down, when they flambe the ice, it ends up just being businessmen.
Yeah, like
zombie
businessmen, and we could even stop there and think about it because it even Michael, we were watching this episode beforehand. Our sound engineer brought up a good point. He's like, all the stuff in the icebergs is like human stuff. It's like zombified human businessmen, little human baby socks, only left ones, and like treasures and swords and stuff like that. So it's odd that out in the ocean there's all these icebergs with human stuff inside them.
I think you're trying to get me to think about something for the future right here.
I'm trying
That's just what I'm assuming. Because they go back out at the end, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to get you theoretically speaking something today.
Theoretically speaking. I don't have any theoretical thoughts in any way this episode. I don't think. This kind of felt a little bit more like a fun, like let's get deep with Finn's psyche and Jake's psyche kind of an episode, and a little bit less of a, hey, this is going to have big implications in the future sort of an episode to me. I did want to ask you, though, who did the businessmen remind you of? Was there anyone from like other cartoons or anything like that they...
cartoons or real life people?
Real life, or yeah, that'd be interesting.
I don't know. I mean, I think I just met, or maybe I've generalized after going to college and going to business school and everything like that.
Oh, the pussy, fleshy people that you met in business school?
Just some of the weird people that you met that were not trying to go for their aspirations like me and you or do music. And they were just like, I want to do finance. And I'm like, well, cool. Like, what do you want to do in finance? And they're like, finance. I don't know, like with the numbers and the money. And I'm like, cool.
Yeah, there's some big internships out there. I remember that a couple guys would brag to me about them getting, and I was just like, yeah, I think my internship's for free. And I think it's like in the middle of nowhere, Athens, Georgia, like for a record label. And I get to work with Nutri-Milk Hotel albums, maybe. Like it was nothing special, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, but so these guys are like washing up on the beach. I'm surprised that Finn doesn't like have like a moment where he's like, I think these dudes are humans. Cause like, I think that would be a big deal for Finn.
I didn't even think about them. Like maybe the implications of our first other human characters.
Yeah.
Probably.
Maybe besides the grandmothers that were the old ladies that were being exploded. Like we couldn't quite figure out if they were human though.
Well, they reminded me of the delightful children from down the lane from Codename Kids Next Door. I don't know.
Oh man, talk about a throwback there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to pick up on that too, just because I feel like sometimes we're on a very similar wavelength. But that was the first thing because they're very like syncretic, like, or maybe syncretic is not the word. They're in sync, and one of them speaks for the whole group, and they kind of walk together and all that stuff. And I was
like
just
a monotone kind of vibe.
kind of creepy, kind of like what's the deal here? Is there the father in the background or whatever? I don't know.
The father in the red tie.
But he was a part of the group. I don't know. It was certainly.
But you're saying like a bigger being controlling these businessmen because they kind of seemed out of whack.
They were kind of the antagonists of the episode in a sense. I think, well, they were at the end, but I don't think they started out being that. But as we see, kind of goes along with a theme is business inherently evil, sort of a thing. Is business inherently bad? Is there a way to do business that isn't in a money first mentality?
Well, I think that they strike a great balance between the two because right off the bat, we see that something about business is efficient because these dudes come right off the beach. They build this gauntlet that Finn and Jake had been obviously working a long time on, and they knock it out in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, the gauntlet dock is unreal. Like, I just couldn't even imagine trying to do that.
I know.
Or they take it and really it looks pretty scrappy. But then as soon as they go into that really cool, like third person perspective, like in a video game sort of a thing, you have Finn and Jake kind of flying through all the obstacles. It's like next level cool.
Yeah, I loved the part they had like some boots on springs and they ran over him and the springs like shot up and kicked him in the butt.
There's some good like little quotes there though. Right before that happens, I believe Jake says, hard work sucks, which I think plays again into something we'll talk about later, like laziness or trying to cut corners any way that you can, sort of a thing. And then the other was Finn talking about, hey, this is our fun pie. We should be the ones to bake it.
Mm-hmm.
And so is it if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself sort of a thing? Or is it kind of more of a, like, it's hard to separate yourself from your initial work or from what you're doing, what you love. And once that separation occurs, then issues start to come about. Just things to be thinking about it as we go along this episode, certainly.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, like, they kick it off at the beginning and end it on the same note that, like, you're really supposed to enjoy the fruits of your labor. That even though hard work sucks, on the flip side, not getting to enjoy the fruits of your own labor, there's a lack of like richness and enjoyment in that thing. Like, yeah, they do the gauntlet, but you see they smash up the whole thing by the end and it's done. So they got to enjoy it, but like, I think that they were enjoying spending time together, roasting like glaciers, building this dock, rather than taking 4 seconds to run through the gauntlet.
They totally miss. It's in my mind, the Rubik's Cube thing, the journey of like doing in a Rubik's Cube. The best part is figuring it out and being stumped for forever. And then when you finally do figure it out, then it's just like, all right, well, sweet. Unless I'm going for time, why am I still doing this? And I'm just the guy with the Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, there's not like there's. If somebody like did a Rubik's Cube for you and gave it to you, you'd be like, now I just have a cube.
Yeah,
it wasn't part of the process.
Multicolored cube. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So I think we're wavelengthing on that, and that theme stays pretty true through the entire show. And like we'll probably talk about that same thing in the instances coming up. But they come back, they invite these business guys to their house, and they're like, you're gonna be almost like our adventure secretaries, which I think is really funny to start out with.
They're just like managers. They reminded me of kind of how the music industry operates, where you have an artist, the artist focuses on the creative, and then you as an artist manager are taking care of everything else in the background. Anything that they don't want to do or they're not good at or whatever, you're just dealing with everything else other than creating songs and recording songs and performing songs.
I thought the same thing, except for the fact that like some of it is unnecessary. So when they follow them over to the hot dog kingdom, which for a second, let's pause and talk about Hot Dog Princess in her little tiny hot dog kingdom.
Is that a kingdom?
That's the hot dog kingdom, man.
That's cool.
So she's the hot dog princess. She's got her hot dog kingdom. She's getting attacked by battle cubes, and the businessmen follow Finn and Jake while they're fighting these battle cubes and are like drinking coffee, busting out notes like crazy. And like for hours they're taking notes. And it reminded me, I was like, how much of our lives too are spent, like you said, kind of doing the admin work. And at the end of the day, like, are those notes really valuable? Was there administrative work on the 2 hours of adventuring like really valuable?
Well, for the businessmen, they're able to take those notes and essentially sub in for Finn and Jake. They don't beat. I almost was wondering if they were going to beat the cubes and save the princess without Finn and Jake's help at all. But really, all they ended up doing was holding them off until Finn and Jake had some water, had some orange slices, and then were ready to get back in there and save this ugly little hot dog princess that's actually a hot dog.
Yeah. And so you're saying, yeah, that brings up a good point that like kind of even from like say like an artist management perspective, you studied these musicians long enough to when they got to take a sabbatical or when they got to hop off stage, you actually have like low key learned all of their songs and you can sub in.
You might be able to, but I'm sure not. And I don't think anyone's ever going to pay me to do that at this point in my life. I've been out of the musical realm for a while, but they were able to do that. I mean, it's a little different, I mean, they were learning and taking notes on how exactly they do it. And it was something that you don't have to like spend years of your life performing and mastering.
Yeah, come on. I just love metaphors. I'm trying to turn this into a metaphor.
No, I know.
It's not working as well as I expected, but it's there. I see what you're saying for sure. But
why is she? What makes a princess? I guess is what I want to know. Then, if that is a candy or not a candy kingdom, if that is a kingdom or whatever, the little playpen with her doghouse, what makes a like? What qualifies? Is there somewhere you have to go to qualify to be a princess, or do you just proclaim, I'm the princess of this thing?
They never really get into the exact definition, but you can see that. And I wanted to talk about introductions in this week. And one of the introductions was to Hot Dog Princess and her hot dog kingdom. You learn that she's got about like 4 little hot dog knights that are just little hot dogs with like swords and shields and armor. And it's like, that's awesome. But that's their kingdom. And then we will get introduced to more princesses, all of which have bizarre kingdoms. Like, there's Raggedy Princess, and she just lives in the dump.
Like a Raggedy Ann type thing?
Yeah, like she's like a bunch of like sewn up gross old socks, and that's Raggedy Princess. But her kingdom is just like the junkyard. And cool. Ghost Princess, like, there is Ghost Princess, who is a princess because she was a princess in a past life. Then there's like, so each one is like, there's not a direct like correlation of what makes you a princess, except for they have kingdoms and subjects and some form of like land and like piece of land or piece of property or people that they control and have jurisdiction over.
Well, she was great until she stood up. And then all of a sudden we got like a close up of her face and it just kind of like flopped over. You know,
you realized that she wasn't like a dachshund. She was a hot dog.
That's when I was out. And she smelled like hot dog water.
Smelled like hot dog water. And she wanted to give Finn kisses. It was like, I mean, we've talked like 4 episodes in a row about how
everybody wants to give Finn kisses.
Everybody wants to give Finn kisses. He's just like the most attractive man out.
Most kissable character. We got Ice King's heart is the most punchable and Finn is the most kissable.
Oh, man.
For the entire kingdom, I guess.
But on that note, too, because I wanted to backtrack in before we even got to the battle cubes. A fun part of this episode is like I went back and watched it again and was like, oh my gosh, we got introduced to the 3 like repeating characters that are awesome, like Hot Dog Princess being one. Right off the bat, I don't know if you noticed, but when Finn lights his torch or his flamethrower, he uses a little guy, like a little creature,
a little flame boy,
and his name's Flambeau.
Flambeau,
and he's like one of the right hand men to the Fire Princess.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. He just kind of scampered off.
Yeah, he scampered off, but like he continues to come up in like lots of the seasons, and he kind of talks with like a New Jersey accent later.
That's awesome. Well, is the other one my lovely of the episode?
Maybe not, but we finally see for the first time, and I've been waiting for it for so long, we see Beemo.
Not Rotom. Rotom's Pokemon. Beemo is his name in this thing, right? It is Beemo.
Yeah, the video game machine.
Yes, I was thinking Rotom. Rotom is a Pokemon in the Pokemon verse that is an electronic Pokemon that sits inside of devices. And for some reason, I didn't want to look it up because I wasn't sure, but That's what I thought it was.
Yes,
I was like, this is Rotom.
That is BMO.
It's BMO. Okay.
Yeah, and you see the little arms and the like BMO's just sitting down while
they were like playing a video game.
Yeah, I think it was called like football 19 or 1861, and it was like Abraham Lincoln themed football.
That's so great. Well, he is definitely my lovely of the episode.
Give me some sugar, baby.
We don't really see him that much, but I just remember liking him a lot, and we don't know anything about him from this episode other than the back of his head. But I remember loving him.
We're gonna get some great BMO episodes. So hold that lovely in your heart, because it's gonna come out again, and you're gonna be like, oh man, like just bring on the BMO, man.
I'm down for the repeat lovelies. Today he's my lovely. He'll probably end up being my lovely again in the future. I feel like he's got a robotic voice, maybe. Definitely not Rotom. I'm sorry, BMO fans.
And props to all the Pokemon fans that caught that one out there.
Did we get to see one of Finn's first swords, or was this his first sword?
I think this is one of his first swords. If he hasn't used a different one,
I can't remember. This one was gold and had like a really cool red gem.
Yeah, this one he does use for a little while, and I can't remember if he loses or breaks this one, or just gets a better replacement after this one. But this is kind of like, I think, from the artwork we see in the advertisements and displays of the show, this is kind of like a staple sword, and one that's like Finn uses a lot. I don't think there's much special about it besides it's gold, so it's probably you'll see when you get down into Finn and Jake's like treasure room, and they have like lots of cool loot that they've looted, and I think this is just like a cool loot sword.
Yeah, the business guys clean it up for him. They're like taking care of his socks, taking care of his shoes and all that stuff. And I'm sure as a 12-year-old, he's never had, we haven't seen his mom or his dad. So his parents are taking care of him. I am barely taking care of myself as a 20-something-year-old living in Nashville. I can't imagine he's cleaning his socks on a regular basis, which is a little gross to think about.
Yeah, he looks like apparently if you can just find socks in icebergs, like you may not have a need to clean them very often.
That's true. You got to keep digging, though. A lot of child left-footed socks out there.
Oh, yeah, got to find the right-footed ones somewhere.
But they were playing on BMO. I'm going to try my best not to say the other name. And while they were doing that, they were just eating ice cream and, getting a little lazy, getting a little out of shape. And Finn and Jake were just all about it because everything was being taken care of. They had the businessmen. Jake walks over to them and says, hey, what is all this? And there's a whole bunch of new equipment in their house. And basically the businessman just says, like, we're dealing with all the small issues. We've already seen them perform hero work. And we're going to save the big stuff for you.
And we've, lo and behold, see that, like, basically there is no big stuff. That was kind of a excuse of like, feel free to do nothing, Yeah,
it was LSP was something that I almost considered big. I'm like, this is one of your closest friends, is it not? And she's endangered by a giant Cyclops monster. And Finn and Jake just let the business guy go take care of them.
I know. Well, and that makes me think, it kind of, as it plays back to us, it's hard when there's responsibilities that we should be handling. That there's stuff that is our forte and we can do a really good job at it and it's meaningful to us. But when we're presented with the option to just be lazy or just let somebody else handle it, it's almost too enticing not to take that option and sit and eat, 47 containers of ice cream.
Yeah. And LSP just kind of, the award for the most distressed princess easily goes to her. And
always distressed princess. Well, I know that I am getting business out a little bit right now, so I need a break. I think our sponsors want to drop some words in there. I know they paid, like I said, valuable time.
And then we can talk a little bit more about business once we return.
We're going to talk about business, and we're going to talk about you and me, Russell.
Get into business.
We're going to get in the grit.
NP Business here. I know you got needs. Shoot, we all got needs. It's part of being a human. Call today to get your business needs taken care of. Because I, NP Business, at Business and Business, want to take care of your business needs. Just call 1-800-BUSINESS-TIME today for your free business consultation. That's right, your free hands-on consultation. Again, 1-800-BUSINESS-TIME today.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for listening to that ad. You know that it helps put bread in me and Russell's pockets, that we're just getting so much money from the land of ooh and from these business guys.
This was such a great idea. This podcast, just so much money flowing, like passive income.
Just passive candy income, just right in my pockets.
Drop shipping, all that stuff, not worth doing. I'm telling you right now, start a podcast. We haven't even released an episode and I don't have enough pockets for all the money.
For all the money that's flowing. But we'll get right into it, man. We want to talk about business. If y'all didn't know, if you aren't close personal friends with Russell and I, we both went to Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia. And this is our forte, man.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
It is our forte. The disclaimer here is none of this is going to be incredible business advice. This is simply like, in relation to the episode, here's what I was saying. The very first thing is there is a necessity of business. I think in life and what we're doing, we're joking about money in the podcast, but essentially, as we're doing this podcast, what I'm noticing is we're running a business. It is fun. And the reason we wanted to do this is because we're doing this because we love it, because we're passionate about it, because this is such a cool subject to be talking about every week. But then we started diving into, well, okay, we got to release this. Where are we going to release it? What's distribution? What is the marketing for this podcast? How are we going to promote it? You know, there's so many little bits and pieces. And the truth is, anything that you do, any passion that you have will eventually lead to, if you're successful or if you're trying to grow it, into a business. You got to survive and you want to do your passions, but you want to do your passions for a living.
Yeah, man. I mean, I completely agree with you in a sense that, like, if we didn't do the work on our podcast, if we didn't do the stuff that was like the admin and the Excel sheets and the distribution and the strategy meetings, that if I just showed up here every Wednesday night, said my piece, did a recording, and went home, I wouldn't have as much of a love for it. And there wouldn't be such a joy in being able to put it out and be like, this is like the pad. This is what I've worked on, man, you know?
Yeah. And we would be doing it to an audience of 0 without any sort of promotion, without any sort of marketing. There's a necessity to dive deeper into what you're doing and figure out how to make it work. And Finn and Jake fail as business owners to a degree because they don't delegate well.
Yeah. Well, give me the flip side of that coin, because I know you're about to flip the coin and say, what is the flip side of everything can't be business, you know?
Everything can't be business, and there has to be passion. It kind of gets down to my lesson of this episode. There's an importance, and I kind of wanted to focus in on your mission statement. I think is incredibly important. I think the mission statement is a way to keep that passion, especially for the CEOs, for the upper level management, all that stuff. Those guys need to like live and breathe the mission statement and really believe it, especially if you're the person writing it. And if your mission statement means nothing to you, you know, I mean, and hopefully it's something more than just, you know, we're trying to make money.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and really that's why Jake and Finn's mission is awesome. It's like they're adventuring, they're protecting people. They are on a driven mission to keep ooh a safe place for all of the living creatures that are there. And their mission, so they have a solid mission statement. The business guys believe in that mission statement, but they are so business focused that they are just doing stuff. It's almost like doing busy work. They're sucking these little white fluffs into their care sack, and it doesn't serve a purpose besides it's logical, it's reasonable. But when Jake and Finn go, they're not happy. That's our mission statement, is for these guys to be happy. They go, happiness isn't a factor. Happiness is not what matters in business. And that's what I think the flip side of that coin that you're talking about is, that if you're doing business for the sake of business with no driven mission statement, with no values that you're upholding,
that you're staying rooted in.
Yeah, you're staying rooted in the values. And then you end up in situations where you're just sucking things into care sacks for no reason.
So that gets into the other point of like something our professor that I think we shared, I don't know if we can name him, music business professor, told in his very first class, or one of his first classes, was success hides a multitude of sins. And so for Finn and Jake, once they made it, once they had a business around them, once they had workers, they got lazy and they got out of shape and they stopped heroing and they forgot their purpose of heroing. I mean, even the business guys were saying, like what I was saying earlier, just the small things, and we'll take, or you stress about the big things because it's delegated at that point. But the people they delegated it to didn't have that same care for adventuring, didn't have that care for saving people. And in their mind, it was all about the bottom line. It was all about profit. It was all about just whatever it takes to keep these people safe. Who cares if they're happy? Who cares if they're enjoying their time? If they like the product or whatever. Let's put these little white creatures in our care sack, which is a fun little, I don't know. What's that a metaphor, Ned?
I don't know. It sounds very like womb-esque. It sounds very like come back to the mother. But I loved that. Like, I thought it was so creepy and funny that it's very much like kind of the AI debacle or AI debate that like once there is a robot that can think for itself and it's only running on logic, it's only running on business, then it starts putting humans in prisons because they're endangering themselves. Doesn't matter if they're happy, but it's logical.
Yeah, and we're so, inefficient, you know.
Inefficient and a danger to ourselves. And totally I'm sure
flawed.
These little white fluffs were terrorizing LSP, but not really. LSP was just being dramatic, right?
Was it LSP? Who was the princess? Or was it just, I think at that point it was just the little white things were all afraid.
Oh, that's what it was.
And what it was they were afraid. And then the big reveal was, it is the businessman. Like the business has flipped and turned and now they're the issue.
That's what
it's no longer, It's really what I had written down was that Finn and Jake had a reliance on heightened efficiencies, which led to a lack of motivation and a lack of focus on why they started and what they wanted to do. They lost their desire to hero and nearly their ability to hero. And Finn and Jake, for them, the problem was the initial solution, was Jake setting out. I mean, he unfortunately set out to be lazy. By hiring the businessman, he was like, oh, well, we don't have to do any of this. And Finn was resistant to that. He didn't want to just hire out for the work that he loved doing, that he was still passionate about, and they didn't need it at that point. And that was almost an issue in and of itself, was hiring too quickly or delegating too quickly and just having it not be their business anymore at all.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, like losing touch with like, you know, that fine line between like management and then being in the trenches yourself. Like, you know, I'm sure that there's plenty of managers out there that are so high level and so removed that they just go, oh, if there's no fires to put out, then I don't have to do anything today. And they consider, and then they just don't end up doing anything.
Got to go golfing at that point.
Yeah, that's the golf mentality manager over
there.
Maybe
I do want that. Maybe I want this podcast to get there to where I could just go golfing. Oh, yeah, I'll come in and record once a week. Oh, I can't believe I got to do this.
Have little podcast interns running around doing our work for us.
Oh, they'd be so adorable.
They'd be so adorable. But I was going to ask you, because I wanted to ask you the question, like, where do you see yourself right now? If we're sitting on a fine line of having to do the balance between over businessing and over chilling, over resting, where do you find yourself now?
Where do I find myself personally?
Yeah.
I think I'm in a good spot right now. I think we're in a good spot with this podcast. I think just in general in life, I will say I'm hyper productive, like almost morally, which is a weird thing. So my productivity plays into whether or not I feel like I did a good job or I was good today, or you know, that's an issue certainly. But that's just, I think we got into that maybe on a different episode. It's just part of who I am as a person, you know, and we deal with that stuff. And you're dealing with that now when we're talking about this podcast. And I'm like, hey, man, yeah, I sent these emails to these people. I'm trying to get, you know, there's just all these things going through my head. And if I wasn't doing that, I feel like I wasn't doing a good job. But it does bring up a really good point in that my thought for food, which is my little segment on here are my thoughts. Please review us. And like, maybe there's some worth in it. Is to take a break, you know, find the balance, essentially, like what you're saying. Like, do you feel like you're there right now, or how do you feel about all that?
I feel like I've found a good balance. I think right now I'm leaning a little bit more on the Finn and Jake ice cream belly, molding ice cream, molding Ice King and Princess Bubblegum into my belly right now, just a little bit. More in a sense like I've done so much in the last 4 years. I've finished college, got married, moved across the country, came back, had 3 jobs, grinded, bought a house this year, and it's a good. I'm in a rest period, but especially through COVID and through having to be stuck inside and being a little bit like forced to be stagnant. It's time stamping the podcast here.
Not to timestamp this episode in any way.
Time stamp it. That I think that I am at my good rest. I've had my water and orange slices, and I got to get back out in the field. I got to do a little bit more in terms of the grind, in terms of getting back to my mission. My missions hasn't changed or anything like that, but maybe I just need to get back out there, get a little bit of this ice cream belly down, and pick back the sword up and start adventuring a little bit more.
And find the balance in life in general and everything. I mean, we're talking about being productive and the way that you are going about your life on that side of things, finding that balance, but also with food. We want to eat healthy. We want to eat vegetables, all that stuff. But then there is a level of you almost need to have ice cream every once in a while. Go on a fun date where you do splurge and you get whatever crazy sushi roll thing, which I guess sushi is moderately healthy, but maybe not healthy financially.
Yeah,
you splurge on all that stuff. Everything's balanced, and my thought for food is simply take a break, find the balance of somewhere between being lazy and needing that break, because if you don't stop moving, if you keep going, I think we as humans need rest. Ben and Jake needed to take a moment and be a little lazy and play some video games with BMO and not worry about heroing. Unfortunately, in their kingdom, it seems like there's constantly something going on, something that they could save, or it doesn't seem like there's another hero out there. It doesn't seem like there's anyone else trying to do this work as well, that they're almost competing against to being the ultimate hero. I mean, he, like what you were saying in the previous episode, is the hero of the Candy Kingdom.
Right.
So they need a break because he's going to get burned out. There's so many negative side effects to not taking a break. If you're lifting every day, you're going to hurt yourself. If you're working every day for 7 hours or 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to overstress. It's going to cause anxiety. There's just so many negative side effects to not taking a break. But on the other hand, if all you're doing is sitting around watching Love Island, it's not exactly, not to say that I'm doing that on my weekends, maybe. It's not exactly the healthiest thing either.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty like standard thing of like you're saying, burnout's real, man. Burnout is tough. Maybe Finn and Jake were burnout, and that's why they got these business guys, got lazy. But when you even have rest post burnout, that's like the definition of burning out. Is you're like, okay, when I take a break, it's that much harder to get back up. And so the business and rest, it's all about ebb and flow. Like, don't go so hard on the business side and the work side that when you stop, you just crash. And so that's
and you can't get back into it.
You can't get back into it. Or, I mean, same thing. Like, we did like a 6 week long crazy diet last year where it was like nothing for 6 weeks, no carbs, or not carbs. It was no gluten, no sugar, no booze for 6 weeks. And then when you stop that, it's almost so much easier to go back into like, well, now I'm going to eat twice as much sugar. Now I'm going to eat twice. So it's that whole like ebb and flow, the balance of life, the balance of responsibilities. And so I think that that's like a great lesson. I think that is, again, we just took an episode that I maybe passed over 10,000 times, watching over and over again. And the more you think about it, and the more we're really talking episode to episode about Finn's development in this show, that's the 12-year-old boy life lesson is like, dude, you can't be lazy, but it's cool. You take your breaks, go play the BMOs, go eat your ice cream, because that's a good thing in life,
Yeah, there is time in life, but also life is fleeting in a sense. You are 27 or 17 or whatever once, but at the same time, if that's all you're thinking about, if you're stressing about, oh my gosh, life is flying by and I need to be so hyper productive all the time, you're never going to get where you want to by doing that anyways.
Yeah.
You know, you got to find that balance and trust that you're doing the right things to get to where you're meant to be in life. And it almost, you know, there are deeper subjects that we could dive into. We could dive in the faith. We could dive into so much more right there. But I think for this episode, that's a pretty good spot to kind of start to wrap things up a little bit.
Yeah, man. I wanted, since we didn't do a theoretically speaking of this episode, I want to get the gears churning for the rest of season 1 for you and kind of get you thinking. This is actually one of the first times in the series, and Pendleton Ward actually dropped it in an interview he did after they dropped this episode. This is the first episode where the writers did publicly state that Ooh was in a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Really?
Yeah. So think about this because
and why?
And I started thinking about it because I was like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, there's human stuff coming in on icebergs out of the ocean, zombified businessmen that had cell phones, briefcases, everything. They access a satellite. They were like, we're tracking global adventures via satellite. And you're like, whoa, there's a satellite in the air, in a very, very like 20th century looking satellite. And you're like, how in the... There's candy people. There's no scientists. There's no astronauts here. And then lastly, what was it?
I wonder how long ago it occurred. I mean, Finn is so young. He's 12 years old. We saw grandmas survived, I guess.
Maybe. Well, and we maybe still think they're magical. Maybe.
Yeah.
But it was right when the businessmen get launched up into they all get launched into the sky and they all float back down. And Finn's like, I want to hire you back. That's the first like pan over of Ooh you get to see. I don't know if you took kind of like a still shot.
I gotta go back. That's such a good point.
Yeah, there was you could see the outlay of Ooh, so you can see that it's not any sort of like actual continent that exists now.
I can only assume that it's multiverses colliding. I don't know. Was Ooh once Earth? Was it once only human, and then at some point another multiverse was breached?
This is why I dropped that fact at the end of the episode, because I wanted to end today with gears churning. In next week or the next couple of episodes, your gears are going to be churning for too many theoretically speakings.
Good. Well, this wasn't necessarily theoretically speaking, but definitely something for me to be thinking about in the future whenever I'm ranting about something that's not true in the universe. Let's go ahead and get back on a little bit of our beef. I just want to follow up on my beef. Good Mythical Morning, I called them out a couple episodes back. I wanted to say they've done it's almost like I put out those feelings into the universe and then they're like, oh, let's do a couple episodes not on food. And for that, Rhett and Link, thank you so much. You're back on food. I get it. It's Easter. But the episodes recently have been really good. I've really been enjoying Good Mythical Morning. My other thing was Zaxby's. Don't think I can keep eating Zaxby's.
No, that's going to give you some poops, dude.
Well, it is that for sure. But it's also the Zaxby's off of Weston. Or not Weston, Charlotte Avenue.
Yeah, the big one on the hill.
There. They just, man, like they gave me no chicken. They gave me no sauce. It was the worst chicken. It was a soggy bread. The line took forever. There's just no excuses, Zaxby's. You keep doing this to me, and I keep going back because I love you, but I just can't keep doing this.
Yeah, y'all, we're in Nashville. If you didn't already know that, if you haven't caught up or been in touch with the podcast, we have too many amazing hot chicken places to be snacking on Zaxby's.
And not enough Chick-fil-A.
Not enough Chick-fil-A.
We need more of the Lord's Chicken in Nashville.
The Lord's Chicken is the best chicken.
It is.
I would say, man, my beef, I wondered when it was going to come time for this beef, but actually, and maybe I will withdraw this beef later, but it was with Joe Rogan this time.
Whoa.
And it has nothing to do with this podcast, but I know how much of he's revered as a podcast person. I've never listened to a full episode of his podcast, so it wasn't on that, but I've been on a huge Netflix stand-up kick the last couple of weeks.
I don't think all of his stand-up really holds up anymore.
It was so bizarre because I was like, how is this guy running one of the world's most successful and listened to podcasts? Because on stage he was like, hey, you saying this, you saying that. And he was just yelling so much. And I was like, whoa, like, how do you calm down and sit in the studio? Like, so it was weird. So it's not necessarily beef, but I was like, I mean, I'm glad that he's got a good podcast, but dude, like, I know you're funnier than just yelling on stage, you know?
It's a brand. I think what we see with comedians is a lot of times they have to attach themselves to a style of comedy that isn't out there or whatever, whether you're Chris Farley or Robin Williams, they all have their own style or whatever that gets them noticed. I can't say I've ever really listened to Joe Rogan's stand-up comedy. I think he is great as a podcaster. I think he spends a lot of time, vibing, but yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, no hate, no hate on him. Like I said, no hate on him, but like by far, probably one of the worst stand-ups.
You don't love the stand-up? Whoa.
No, yeah, like one of the not as good stand-ups I've seen.
That's
and
fair.
I've seen some worse ones than that. Don't get me wrong, but for how much he's hyped up, I was very let down. So that's beef. No,
his podcast isn't a comedy podcast.
Exactly. No. And no beef on the podcast. Beef on Joe Rogan stand-up. But
that's fair.
Man, this was a good one. I feel like this was very much like stuff that's applicable to us. I even was thinking yesterday. I was like, I don't know how I can think about Business Guy episode for more than the 10 minutes that it lasted. So I'm glad that we kind of got into some ethical dilemmas or, like I said, what we talked the other week about introspection and, really kind of analyzing where we're at. And man, I love looking at the lessons Finn learns and then being like, well, shoot, am I learning those lessons? Am I applying those lessons? So this was good. This was good digestion and thought-provoking time here.
Yeah, maybe we'll see even our friends, the delightful businessmen from down the lane later in the future. Maybe they'll melt on another shore that we're on in our adventure.
I don't want them to come to Nashville, that's for sure.
I don't either. But there's enough of those guys. You could find them if you look around hard enough.
Yeah, we just got to look for the guys that's got the tightest and most not breathe-worthy necktie in town, and maybe we'll talk to him and be like, hey, man, do you want to go eat some ice cream with us? Maybe not burn out as much.
Best and worst part about the music industry is I bought a suit before getting into it and have yet to wear it.
Have yet to wear the suit. Maybe that's a good thing. It helps us be the not business guys. But
well, thanks for joining us, you guys. Thanks. Another episode of Never Ending Adventure Podcast. This was a great little time. We've enjoyed it and can't wait for next week.
Yeah, tune in next week. We're going to talk about Tiffany. Man, I've got some thoughts about Tiffany.
Cool. Review us. Do all the things. Check us out on the socials. Never Ending Adventure Podcast, and we'll see y'all next week.
Business.
Go Braves.
Man, oh man, you guys stuck with us through all of these episodes so far, and right now we are just feeling cloud nine in it. We are just so happy that you guys are here, and we love you guys. This podcast was recorded by Ned Pruitt and Russell Tyndall.
It's Russell. I'm in Ned's basement. He's got me locked up.
He's in my basement. And it was also engineered by Michael.
Someone call my mom.
And we love Michael. We don't love Russell.
I do love Michael, though.